Nobody takes lockdown drills seriously until they're stuck outside the classroom when one starts. I learned that the hard way during my junior year. For years, lockdown drills were basically free time. Teachers locked the doors. Students sat on their phones. 15 minutes later, it was over. Nobody thought about what would happen if a real lockdown actually occurred, especially me, because on the day it became real, I wasn't in class. I was in the bathroom. And I came closer to the intruder than anyone else in the school. This happened during first period. I got to school early and stopped at the bathroom before class. Nothing unusual. I was washing my hands when the intercom activated. The principal's voice came over the speakers. "Attention students and staff. This is a lockdown drill." Immediately I rolled my eyes. Another drill? Great. The problem was that my classroom was all the way down the hall, and once lockdown started, teachers usually locked their doors immediately, so I hurried out the bathroom, and the hallway was already empty. Classroom doors were closing one after another, teachers pulling students inside. I started jogging. Then the announcement repeated, and something fell off. The principal sounded nervous, not panicked, just rushed, like she was reading from a script she wasn't expecting to read. I didn't think much of it at the time. By the time I reached my classroom, the door was already locked. I knocked quietly, no response. Again, nothing. The room had gone dark, blinds closed, everyone hiding, exactly how they were supposed to. And according to school policy, teachers weren't allowed to open the door once lockdown started, even for students. I remember standing there wondering what to do. The hallway was completely empty, silent. Then I heard another classroom door close somewhere nearby. After that, nothing. I decided to hide. About 30 feet away, there was a small maintenance room, not even a room, more like a recessed section of a wall within a janitor's closet and some storage cabinets. I squeezed myself into the corners behind the closet. From there, I could see most of the hallway, but somebody walking by probably wouldn't notice me immediately. At least, that was the hope. I sat there waiting for the drill to end, and then I heard footsteps. At first, I assumed it was security, maybe a staff member checking rooms. Then the footsteps got closer, and I saw him. A man I'd never seen before. Middle age, dirty jeans, gray hoodie, unshaven face, walking slowly through the hallway, looking into classroom windows, one by one. I remember my stomach instantly dropping because he clearly wasn't staff, and he clearly wasn't a student. The man stopped at every classroom, peering through the narrow windows in each door, then moving to the next. I was maybe 40 feet away, hidden behind the storage area watching him. The entire time, I kept waiting for a teacher to confront him, or security, or anybody. Nobody appeared. The school felt abandoned. Then the man stopped. It looked directly toward my section of hallway. I froze. For a second, I thought he saw me, but after a few moments, he continued walking. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. Then my phone buzzed. A text message, and the vibration sounded impossibly loud. The man stopped again. This time, he definitely heard it. The hallway went completely silent. Then he turned around and started walking back toward me, slowly, deliberately. I immediately silenced my phone and shoved it into my pocket. The footsteps got close. 30 feet, 20 feet, 15. I remember looking around desperately for another hiding spot. There wasn't one. The janitor's closet behind me was locked. The storage cabinets were locked. There was nowhere to go. The man kept approaching, looking into every corner, every doorway, every recessed section of the wall, and eventually, he reached mine. What happened next is probably the luckiest moment of my life. As the man entered the alcove, the janitor's closet door suddenly opened. A custodian stepped out carrying supplies, and neither of us knew he was inside. The intruder froze, the custodian froze. For maybe 1 second, nobody moved. Then the custodian immediately slammed the door shut and locked himself back inside. The intruder lunged at the door and started trying to force it open. That was the first moment I truly realized how dangerous he was, because the expression on his face wasn't anger, it was excitement. While he was focused on the closet door, I ran. I didn't think, I just ran. The second my shoes hit the floor, he heard me. I remember hearing him yell, then footsteps behind me, fast, much faster than before. I sprinted down the hallway, past classrooms, past lockers, toward the main office. Every step felt like he was getting closer. I never looked back. I was too scared to. The office staff pulled me inside seconds before he reached the hallway intersection. Security officers arrived almost immediately after that. Police arrived a few minutes later. The building remained locked down for nearly an hour. Nobody knew exactly where the intruder was because he kept moving, avoiding responding officers, using empty hallways, maintenance corridors, storage areas, places students never even knew existed. The reason the principal sounded nervous during the announcement was because it wasn't supposed to be a drill. The school had scheduled a lockdown exercise that morning, but minutes before it started, a mentally unstable former employee entered the building through a service entrance. Administration made the decision to activate lockdown immediately, rather than announce there was an actual intruder. They hoped students would respond faster if they believed it was part of a drill. The man was eventually arrested, hiding inside a maintenance tunnel under the gym. But according to police reports, he had spent nearly 20 minutes wandering the halls before anyone knew exactly where he was. And during most of that time, I was hiding less than 50 feet away from him. The creepiest part, months later, investigators revealed he had never entered a single classroom. Not because he couldn't, because he wasn't trying to. According to interviews after his arrest, he was specifically looking for students who had been locked out during the drill. Students who were alone, like I was. And if that janitor hadn't opened that closet door at exactly the right moment, I would have been the only one person he had found. There was one part of my high school that nobody liked being near after dark. It wasn't because anything bad had happened there, at least not that I knew of. It was just one of those places that felt wrong. The stairwell connected the second floor to an older section of the building that students weren't allowed into anymore. Most of the doors up there had been locked for years, and from what I've heard, the district used some of it for storage. Nobody really talked about it. Most students forgot it even existed. I didn't think about it much either until my senior year. This happened in November of 2018. I was helping and recording video footage for a basketball game after school. Our media club usually stayed late for home games because we had to upload highlights to the school's social media pages afterward. The game ended around 9:30 p.m. Most people left shortly after. By 10 o'clock, the school was nearly empty. There were probably only a handful of people left in the entire building. I remember because I was specifically asked by one of the assistant coaches if they were locking up soon. He told me the janitor was still around and that I had plenty of time. My friend Tyler was helping me carry camera equipment back to the media room on the second floor. The hallways felt strange, not scary, just empty. Schools are loud places during the day. Even when nobody's talking, there's usually some kind of background noise. At night, all of that disappears. Every sound becomes noticeable. The hum of the lights, the air conditioning, the echo of your own footsteps. After putting most of the equipment away, Tyler realized he had left his hoodie near the gym. He told me he'd be back in a few minutes and headed downstairs. I stayed behind to transfer my footage from the camera to my laptop. For a while, everything was normal. Then I heard what sounded like footsteps in the hallway. I figured Tyler was coming back. I didn't even look up at first, but after a few seconds, something fell off. The footsteps weren't moving normally. There would be 2 or 3 steps, then silence, then a few more. Like whoever was walking kept stopping. I glanced toward the door. The small rectangular window looked out into the hallway. I couldn't see anyone. I waited. Nothing. A few more seconds passed, and then I heard the sound again. This time, it seemed closer. I stood up and walked over to the door. The hallway outside was empty. At least it looked empty. Then I noticed the stairwell door at the far end of the hallway. It was open. That immediately caught my attention because that door was always closed. Not usually, but always. I had never once seen it open. For some reason, seeing it cracked open made me uncomfortable. I remember just standing there, staring at it. The hallway was completely silent. No footsteps, no voices, nothing. Then I heard what sounded like a door closing somewhere, above me. Not nearby, but above me. The sound echoed through the stairwell. I froze, and for the first time that night, I got the feeling that somebody else was still in the building. For a few seconds, I just stood there listening. I wasn't really necessarily scared yet, more confused than anything. The sound I heard wasn't loud enough to make me think something serious was going on. My first assumption was that another teacher or coach was still in the building. Maybe somebody had forgotten something upstairs, or maybe maintenance was working late. There were plenty of explanations. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something felt off. I looked down the hallway one more time. The stairwell door was slightly open. Everything else looked normal. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Tyler. "Can't find my hoodie. Be back in a minute." I glanced at the message and laughed to myself. The fact that he couldn't find his hoodie somehow made me feel less uneasy. It reminded me that I wasn't alone in the building, at least not entirely. I went back inside the meeting room and sat down. For another couple minutes, I focused on transferring files from the camera. Then I heard another noise. This time it was much clearer. Footsteps, definitely footsteps, slow, heavy, coming from somewhere above. I stopped what I was doing. The meeting room was located right beside the stairwell. The sound wasn't coming from the hallway anymore. It sounded like someone was actually walking up there, 1 floor above me. I stared at the ceiling. The footsteps continued. 3 or 4 steps, pause, 3 or 4 more, then silence. I remember checking the time, 10:17 p.m. For some reason, seeing the exact time made everything feel more real. I stood up and walked back into the hallway. The stairwell door was still open. The fluorescent lights above buzzed softly. The entire hallway was empty. I told myself I was being ridiculous. If somebody was upstairs, there was probably a normal explanation. But curiosity started getting the better of me. I walked toward the stairwell. Each step seemed louder than it should have. The closer I got, the darker the opening looked. When I reached the door, I hesitated. I don't know why. Looking back, I think part of me already knew I didn't want to see what was up there. The stairwell itself wasn't unusual, just concrete walls, metal railings, the faint smell of dust. I stepped inside. The moment I did, the hallway noises disappeared. Everything became strangely quiet. I could hear the hum of the building's ventilation system, somewhere far away, water dripping, and nothing else. I slowly looked up. The stairwell continued to the landing above. The upper section was mostly hidden from view. I stood there for several seconds. No movement, no footsteps, nothing. I was about to turn around when I noticed something strange. There was a plastic water bottle sitting on the landing. At first, that doesn't sound important, but the thing is, students weren't allowed up there. Nobody used that section of the building anymore. The bottle looked relatively new, not dusty, not crushed, like it had been left there recently. That was enough to make me uncomfortable. I backed out of the stairwell and returned to the meeting room. I decided I wasn't interested in investigating any further. If somebody was up there, it wasn't my job to figure out why. I would wait for Tyler and leave, simple as that. At least, that was the plan. About 5 minutes later, Tyler finally came back. He still hadn't found his hoodie. When he walked into the room, I immediately told him about the noises. I expected him to joke about it. Instead, he frowned. Upstairs? I nodded. Like in the old section. Yeah. For a second, he didn't say anything. Then he looked toward the hallway. Dude. What? I've heard weird stuff about that area. I rolled my eyes. Here we go. No, seriously. He lowered his voice. My cousin graduated from here a few years ago. He said some janitors found evidence somebody had been staying up there. I laughed. Staying up there? That's what he heard? Like a homeless person? I don't know. The idea sounded ridiculous. There was no way somebody could secretly live inside a school, especially for any meaningful amount of time. The conversation should have ended there. But then something happened that made both of us stop talking. A loud metallic bang echoed through the hallway. It sounded like something hitting a locker. Hard. Tyler looked at me. I looked at him. The noise definitely hadn't came from downstairs and sounded close, maybe 50 feet away. We both stepped into the hallway. Again, it was completely empty. The sound had been loud enough that whoever caused it couldn't have gone far. Yet there was nobody there. No teacher, no janitor, nothing. Then Tyler pointed toward the stairwell. The door had closed. Neither of us had touched it. A few seconds passed. Then we heard movement. Not footsteps this time. More like something being dragged across the floor. The sound lasted only a second or two, then stopped. I could feel my stomach tightening. At this point, I wasn't thinking ghost. I wasn't thinking paranormal. I was thinking someone was actually up here. Someone who wasn't supposed to be. And suddenly, that felt much worse. Tyler whispered, "Did you hear that?" I nodded. We stood there listening. Another long silence followed. Then, from somewhere above us, came a sound I'll never forget. A cough. A human cough. Not loud. Not exaggerated. Just a normal cough. The kind somebody makes without thinking. Both of us heard it. There was no debating what it was. Someone was up there. The realization hit instantly. We weren't imagining things anymore. There was another person in the building, and for some reason, they were hiding in an abandoned section of the school after 10 o'clock at night. Neither of us spoke. I remember looking at Tyler and seeing the same expression I probably had on my face, that suddenly understanding that this wasn't a joke. Whatever was upstairs was real, and neither of us had any idea who it was. Neither of us moved for a few seconds. The cough had completely changed the situation. Up until that point, there was the possibility that we'd been overreacting. Old buildings make noises. Doors close by themselves. You hear things differently when you're alone. But a cough? That was different. That was undeniably human. Tyler was the first one to speak. "Dude, we should probably find Mr. Keller." I immediately agreed. The last thing either of us wanted was to confront whoever was upstairs by ourselves. We headed downstairs and found Mr. Keller pushing a floor buffer near the cafeteria. The second we explained what we had heard, his expression changed. Not dramatically, just enough that I had noticed. He stopped what he was doing and asked us exactly where we had heard the noise. When we told him the old stairwell, he sighed. Then he set the machine aside. "Stay here," That was all he said. No explanation, no questions, just stay here. The fact that he wasn't surprised made me even more nervous. Tyler and I watched him disappear down the hallway toward the stairwell. 5 minutes passed, then 10, and neither of us said much. We just sat on a bench outside the cafeteria, waiting. At one point, I actually considered leaving, but curiosity kept me there. Eventually, we heard footsteps approaching. Mr. Keller appeared around the corner. His face looked pale, not terrified, just bothered, like someone who'd found exactly what they expected to find. Tyler immediately asked what had happened. For a second, Mr. Keller didn't answer. Then he looked at both of us. There was somebody up there. The words made my stomach drop. Who? He shook his head. Don't know. What do you mean you don't know? He ran. Apparently, when Mr. Keller reached the upper level, he found signs that somebody had been staying there. Blankets, food wrappers, empty water bottles, a flashlight. Someone had set up a makeshift sleeping area inside one of the abandoned classrooms. But before he could get a good look at them, they took off through the maintenance staircase that connected to the back of the building. By the time he got outside, whoever it was had disappeared. That should have been the end of it. Honestly, it should have made me feel better. We finally had an explanation. No ghosts, no paranormal activity, just a trespasser. Yet somehow I felt worse, because now all I could think of was about how long they had been there, and how many times people had unknowingly walked past them, watching, listening, waiting. The next week, the story spread quickly. Within days, everyone at school was talking about it. Most versions were exaggerated. Some people claimed the guy had been living there for years. Others said he escaped from prison. Nobody really knew. The administration never released much information. The only thing we heard officially was that the security had been increased, and several unused sections of the building were being inspected. Then, something strange happened. About a week later, Tyler got his hoodie back, or at least what was left of it. One of the janitors found it upstairs, inside the abandoned section, folded neatly on her desk. The same hoodie Tyler had lost the night of the game. When he showed it to me, both of us felt sick, because neither of us had gone upstairs that night, not beyond the first landing. The hoodie shouldn't have been there. Somebody had taken it and moved it. That meant whoever had been hiding upstairs had almost certainly been watching us long enough to know the hoodie belonged to one of us, watching us long enough to pick it up after Tyler dropped it, and for some reason, they kept it. About 2 months later, another detail came out. One of the maintenance workers discovered a small opening behind a storage room wall on the old floor. The space wasn't on any of the school's current floor plans. It had originally been used decades earlier to access electrical equipment. Over the years, it had been basically forgotten. Inside, they found more evidence: blankets, cans of food, batteries, newspapers, enough supplies that it was obvious someone had been using the space often. The creepiest part, there were multiple dates written on the wall, dates spanning nearly 8 months. Whoever had been staying there wasn't just passing through. They'd been living inside the school, watching students, watching teachers, watching everyone for months, maybe longer, and nobody knew. I graduated the following year. I have never gone back to that school. A few years ago, I ran into Mr. Keller at a grocery store. We talked for a few minutes, and eventually conversation drifted back to that night. I asked him if they had ever figured out who that person was. He looked at me for a second, then shook his head. No. That surprised me. I figured that security cameras would have caught something, or somebody would have eventually been identified. But according to him, they never found out. No name, no arrest, nothing. Whoever had been living inside the abandoned section of the building simply disappeared. The last thing Mr. Keller said before leaving has stuck with me ever since. He told me there was one thing he never mentioned to the school administration. Apparently, when he found the sleeping area that night, there was a notebook sitting beside the blankets. Most of the pages were empty, but a few contained a list of names. Student names, teachers, staff members, people from the school, including mine and Tyler's. And according to Mr. Keller, both of our names had been written only for a few days before we heard the cough upstairs. I don't know who that person was. I don't know why they were living there. And I definitely don't know why our names were in that notebook. But every now and then, I think about that night. One question still bothers me. If we hadn't had heard that cough, would we have ever known someone was there at all? Or would they still be hiding somewhere inside that school today? Thank you so much for watching the video. Please like and subscribe. And in the comments, please recommend other topics I should go over. Thank you.